So we're back again, looking at the Unit 3 part of the paper. So the focus that we've got today is looking at the second section. After looking at Section A last week, we're going to be looking at Section B now this week. So again, what we're looking at is developing your knowledge about question types in the exam, okay? And similar to Section A, what you have here is 1 hour allocated to this part of the examination paper. So it's very important that you keep yourself mindful of the time that's being allotted, okay? So the skills that you're going to need in order to show the examiner what you're capable of. So things like varied sentence lengths and types. So when we're talking about varied sentence lengths here, we're talking about using both shorter sentences, longer sentences. Normally, you'd probably find that you're using those short sentences to create a sense of maybe shock with regards to the audience, to draw attention to something in particular, something which is sharp. And then maybe when you're describing something in a little bit more depth, and you'd be adding the commas and the other punctuation, is where you'd use the longer, more complex sentences. So varying your sentence openers. So instead of saying next or the next and repeating yourself, you make sure that you use connectives such as furthermore, moreover, and you develop your writing. Using varied punctuation. So things like, you know, if you wouldn't normally use an exclamation mark, if you're trying to draw attention to something in particular, use the exclamation mark. Ensure that you're using question marks appropriately and correctly, trying to take note of where the apostrophe goes. So these small little things that you could be potentially mindful of will most definitely help you with regards to the marks that you're going to achieve as well, okay? A range of vocabulary, so as wide range as you can possibly use, and obviously just making sure that it's valid and relevant to the points that you're making. Accurate spelling, so especially commonly misspelt words, so things like what, where, then, even things like possibly a little bit stretched into like therefore, so things that they would expect you to be spelling correctly. To show an ability to develop arguments and write persuasively, to the ability to sustain your writing. So 2 sides of A4 is what's expected, probably in the answer booklet, because the margins are a little bit narrower. You probably would be expected to go over the second side, possibly up to 2.5 pages in your answer booklet, okay? Bear in mind, you've got 2 tasks here. So you need to make sure that you've separated and split your time quite equally. And to make sure that you are implementing and using a range of techniques that are obviously task suitable, but we will be going through those, okay? So the 2 purposes in this particular writing section for Unit 3 is argumentation and persuasion. Your purpose and your audience always come first, as well as your structure. So making sure you paragraph and you put things in a logical sequence, okay? So like I said, you have 2 tasks that you need to respond to. You need to respond to both of those writing tasks, and you need to write around 300 words in each of those responses. So bearing in mind, in Unit 2, Section B, okay, the writing section, you have 1 task. However, for Unit 3, Section B, there are 2 tasks. So the possible writing tasks that you may come across are things like a letter, for example, and this could be either formal or informal. Asked to write a speech, or they could label it sometimes, if you notice here, as a contribution or a talk. So making sure that you know that if they say write a contribution or write a talk, that you know that essentially they're asking you to deliver a speech, a written speech. A leaflet or a guide, a review, an article or a blog, and then a formal report or a report. So again, the formal report and the report, similar to the formal and informal letter, okay? Then some tips then for extended writing. So explode the question. So make sure you answer the task you were given. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll be looking at what it means to explode the question, to make sure that you're pulling out all of the aspects that you need to be looking at. Make sure that you're hitting that word count. So aim for that 300 words for each piece. Make sure you're aware of the purpose, audience, format, and obviously the task when you're writing. To plan your ideas in a brief bullet point. Remember, you've only got 30 minutes for each section if you're splitting your time evenly between two tasks. So just be really mindful that when you are putting your plan together, just to keep it brief, to keep it precise, to make sure you're being specific, okay? The plan there will help keep you on task and to make sure that you are maintaining a focus, okay? Make sure you organise your work effectively into organised and correct paragraphs. To proofread at the end, you should give yourself a couple of minutes at the end just to briefly read over, proofread your work, check for any errors, make sure you've done things like, for example, use the correct layout for a letter. Make sure that you've used paragraphs. Have you put full stops? Have you used a comma? Have you used apostrophes? So you can double check that. To try and use ambitious vocabulary where appropriate and where possible, and use a range of techniques. Again, we'll go over this in a little while to engage your reader. So argumentation, so what does that mean? So here you're looking for any signpost phrases, such as words that say arguing, giving your views, something you feel strongly about, give your opinion about something, express your opinion, or express your concerns. So it's asking you to provide some sort of argument. So they're the sort of phrases that you're likely to come across in your examination, okay, that will direct you to what kind of approach you need to take to the task. So what we need to remember then, so writing an argument for GCSE English is different from arguing with your friends. You need to ensure that it is balanced and that it is rational, so sensible, okay? These words, balanced here and rational, the idea of make sure it's a sensible argument. So less passionate or emotional than if you're writing to persuade. You should take opposing views into account in your response. So you're making sure that it's considered, okay? That you're not just going off on a ramble or a rant about one particular subject, that you are thinking about opposing views, you're taking them into consideration, you're showing that you're taking them into consideration, and then you proceed with your own arguments. So don't forget to acknowledge those counter arguments and make sure that you do so politely, okay? It's fine to have an opinion, but go about it in a polite manner. So how to approach the argumentation. So you've got to make sure that you aim to write a short introduction and conclusion with 3 developed paragraphs in the main body. Use a range of technique to present your argument or arguments. Make sure you use examples and evidence to support what you say. Make sure you use topic sentences to introduce what the paragraph is about. Again, we'll be looking at that in a second, the topic sentences. So adverbs to emphasize your point. So surely, obviously, importantly. And these can be sentence starters as well, okay? So ensure, and it shows a sense of confidence in your writing as well when you're using words such as surely, obviously, and importantly. Use connectives to structure your response. So firstly, secondly, moreover, also, furthermore. So developing your argument in a structured and organised fashion. Acknowledge the other side of the argument using connectives, such as alternatively, on the other hand, some might argue. So you're showing an awareness and an appreciation. That's what's important with the argumentation. You're showing that appreciation of other views, but you always here, as you can see, okay, in red, always come back to your main view. Okay, that is what is central. You show an awareness, you show an appreciation, but you always return to your opinion. And again, this idea of using the ambitious vocabulary, include a range of punctuation. Okay, so they're really key aspects. So some ideas here when it comes to giving your opinion. So you've got a little mat here that you could potentially look at. So how to introduce your argument, developing your argument, admitting a counter argument, countering then the counter argument and your conclusion. So it would be perfectly fine for you to have a look at this, maybe attempt to write some responses using this to help you structure. So you've essentially got your introductory paragraph, your development paragraph, your admitting counter-argument paragraph, you countering those views, and then your conclusion. So that would be a nicely rounded, well-worked response then, okay? So you've got things like signposts, like starters. I think that, I strongly believe it is undeniable. I ask you to consider as your introduction, okay? And then with regards to the development, furthermore, moreover, and then you work your way through it, okay? But all of the signposts, all of these starters show this sense of argumentation and maintain that focus for the task. With persuasion, then, on the other hand, you're looking out for keywords such as persuade, persuading, encourage, or tempt. Okay, so any of those words may drive you and make it quite clear to you what task you should be answering on. Okay, so again, we'll have a quick look at how to approach the persuasion tasks. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you aim to write a short introduction and conclusion with 3 developed paragraphs in the main body. Use a range of techniques to persuade the reader to your point of view. Use evidence and examples to support what you say. Okay, so bear in mind that you have had resource material. Okay, you'll have had some resource material in your section A. So there's nothing using some of those ideas, but obviously making sure you're not clung to it. Use topic sentences to introduce what the paragraph is about. Use adverbs to emphasize your point, like I said earlier, surely, obviously, importantly. And again, we're returning to that idea of the ambitious vocabulary. What you also need to consider is that idea of persuasive devices, persuasive techniques. So a lot of you may be familiar with, I know this is quite popular in a lot of schools. So it's what we call a forest. And this refers to the use of the following techniques in a text. So you've got alliteration, so the repetition of the same sound in successive words. Anecdotes, so using kind of personal stories that you could potentially use to develop your ideas. Using facts or using flattery. So facts and figures, possibly flattery. So telling your audience, oh, I appreciate that you'll already know this. So you're kind of like trying to butter them up almost, okay, trying to get them on your good side or get on their good side. Opinions then, so viewpoints, different viewpoints, rhetorical questions, and also repetition. So where you are asking a question of the audience, but you don't expect the answer, where you're using repetition for effect and to gauge attention, where you use emotive language, so making sure that the audience are aware of any emotional factors and emotional triggers. So things like in a speech, a lot of people may use things like imagine a world where, and they could repeat that phrasing as well. So it's just trying to get them to kind of like engage with that emotional angle a little more. Exaggeration then, so hyperbolic statements where you go over the top. Often this could link to emotion as well. So use of statistics. So again, the idea of facts, figures. You could even bring in quotations from maybe specialists in specific fields. And then superlatives, again, where you're going over the top. Then you've got the rule of 3 or tripling as well. But like I said, you're probably very familiar with these terms, but sometimes having that acronym, so a forest, kind of reminds you, oh, I need to use alliteration. Sometimes I have candidates who write a forest on the front of their paper, and they try to make sure they tick at least one of them off for their persuasive writing, okay? So here is a little bit of an idea as to how your different answers could potentially look on a page. So you've got in the top left corner here, okay, you've got the formal and informal letter. So notice how in one you don't need the address of the person you're sending the letter to, whereas in the other you do. You will close the letter a little bit differently as well. With the speech then, so the one in the middle at the top, you've got your introduction, your first paragraph, your second paragraph, your third paragraph, and then your conclusion. So an organised fashion. With a leaflet or guide, you've got your title, your first paragraph, a picture, or something description in words with it. You've got second paragraph, third paragraph, and again, you've got images, possibly as well subheadings with those. With the review, then you can see that there's again use of subheadings to keep it organized. So you'd have your main heading, your main body of text, as in your initial paragraph, and then you'd have it structured with the use of subheadings. Report layout. So you've got like your introductory section, and then you've got your subheadings that run through the report. Remembering though that this is a lot more formal than the other. And then articles. So you've got your title, your introductory paragraph, your subtitles. You may have some pictures, again, developed and organised, okay? So that's what it may potentially look like, okay? Formal letters, then, what you've got here is an example of how to structure it, okay? So looking at where your address is, where their address goes, how to open it, where the date goes as well. So there's an example of the formal letter, and then how you close them. You've got, so dear Sir, Madam is yours faithfully, and then dear Mr. Jones, Miss Allen, Miss Smith would be yours sincerely, okay? And then with your signposts and phrases, so you've got starting paragraphs, you'd have firstly, secondly, another significant point, finally, and then the key phrases here, okay, the idea of looking at to show that something is particularly important. So you've got things like significantly, most importantly. So again, you've got the use of the superlative or hyperbole where you're exaggerating, essentially, crucially. Okay, so it becomes with the crucially and the essentially quite emotive as well there. Okay. Here then what we've got are some possible questions that you may have, so things which have appeared in the past in past examination papers. So the type of questions, this is sort of how they are worded in general. So you've recently visited a new restaurant in town and you have strong opinions on your visit. Write a review of your visit. So as you can see, these are worth 20 marks, but again, at the end, I've got the mark scheme that applies to these questions. So here you've got to consider, is your review going to be positive or negative? You need to make sure that you include a heading. So what you've got on this slide then is essentially a checklist, a success criteria of, right, if I'm given a review question, what do I need to make sure that I include? Okay, so is it positive or negative? Your approach, you need to make sure that you include a heading, provide an overview, focus on the strengths and weaknesses, and acknowledge that there may be opposing views. Provide a recommendation or some sort of a rating, and again use that 4-point argumentation structure, okay, where you've got the introductory, you've got real kind of clear points of argument, and then you've got an organized conclusion. So with speeches then, you must make sure that you do the following. So you address your audience right at the beginning, but you keep it brief, okay? You provide clear opinions, use an appropriate tone for the audience, you know, and like I've said at the bottom, and humour if it's suitable for the topic. And it also depends on who your given audience is. So that's what the appropriate tone is. So make sure that you're mindful of who they're telling you your audience is. So if they're asking you to deliver to your year group or your class, your tone and your approach will be different to whether they were asking you to deliver to maybe the staff body in the school. So you'd have a more formal tone, quite possibly, if writing a speech to deliver to, say, adult audience, as opposed to if you were delivering to your year 11 class or your year 10 class. Okay, so just be mindful that your vocabulary choices, your tone, maybe the types of words that you include and your arguments would vary dependent on your audience. So you need to just make sure you are really mindful of who you're writing for. Okay, leaflets then, you need to make sure that you've got a title, you've got a name or a catchy heading, You've got an introductory paragraph which would outline the tourist attraction or whatever the given topic is, that you organise it into subheadings, that you implement and use those persuasive techniques, remembering the aforist, okay, and the language choices. You'd write in second person of your include facts, statistics, and like we're saying about the aforist, the emotive language choices, again though task dependent, and the key informational details, again depending on what the task focus is. So the details underneath your subheading should always link to the topic, and you need to use a topic sentence to start your paragraph. So say now, for example, we are going to create an article on why visit Llandudno. You could open with things like Llandudno is a fantastic resort for young and old to visit as it benefits from, okay, and then you could list some bullet points. But like I've said there in the highlighted section here, okay, don't use too many. Don't overdo the bullet points. If we're going to make a list in bullet points, we're talking 4 or 5. Okay, too many detracts from the actual substance of what you're writing. Remembering you have to hit 300 words. You're not going to go particularly far hitting 300 words with kind of like bullet points all the way through. You have to ensure that you have got developed and structured writing in there. Okay, so what we've got then is just an example here of how to open a tourist type leaflet, and this is based on York. So there are many layers to the historical city of York, and each one will hold appeal for a different type of person. Fancy a quick shop? York city centre has all you need and more. History more your thing? Then visit the Dig or the Jorvik, say Jorvik centres. Do you thrive on fear? Then enter the York dungeons or meet with the ghost hunters every Thursday night in the shambles. Not for the faint of heart. So the tone of that, I don't know whether you could hear it when I'm reading through, is really, really clear. Okay, the candidate, this particular guide, is trying to engage and trying to persuade and encourage you to visit York. And what they're doing is they're trying to show that whatever place they're trying to get you to go to, that it appeals to multiple audiences. So you've got, there are many layers to the historical city of York, and each one will hold appeal for a different type of person. So those of you who shop, fancy a quick shop? History more of your thing? Okay, and then do you thrive on fear? So making sure that you are aware that if you plan to visit York, that there's multiple things that could potentially suit you and your personality and your interests, okay? So it's multifaceted. When it comes to articles then, if we move quickly on, we are thinking of making sure we include a headline, okay, so or an article title, which should be short and quite catchy, that we make use of the first person plural, so we, the second person direct appeal of you, and that we use this play on words, so using puns, usually in the title, that we would potentially use some humour and some sarcasm, obviously if it's appropriate, task dependent, and the correct tone and language for the audience. So the layout of articles here, okay, if it says lively, be entertaining or humorous, okay, so be mindful of the way in which it's worded. Okay, and ensure that you consider your target audience really carefully. So when you're organising then your article layout-wise, you need to make sure you've got your catchy heading, an introduction that really grips and engages your reader, 3 or 4 really sort of central main paragraphs, and then a short but really useful conclusion where you are managing to kind of summarise everything together. Formal reports then, possibly the task that you're least familiar with. This is what I find with candidates, possibly the one that you will practice less in school. What you have to ensure is that you are careful with your language, that you make sure you use common sense. If it's a formal report, you've got to make sure that you have got that correct tone, that you put it into organised subheadings, so an introduction, 3 to 4 headings which are linked to the topic, some recommendations on improvements, and a conclusion. So this is an example of a persuasive formal report that you could potentially be asked to deliver to write. So you've got your local council wants suggestions of ways in which they could encourage young people to take part in sports teams. Write your report. So encouraging young people to take part in sports team for Carmarthenshire County Council would be your heading then, or whatever council you're writing for. Okay, so suggestions of ways in which they could encourage young people to take part in sports. So essentially what you would sort of start with is looking at the current situation, outlining whatever flaws that there currently is, and then you move on then to progress your way through it. Okay, so you've got the title at the top, the subtitle or the introduction or the overview, your opening paragraph explaining what the report is about. The next subtitle is your first line of focus. So maybe in this instance, you'd maybe look about the benefits of sport. Then you've got a subtitle. So maybe here you'd look at the idea of working in teams. Then you've got your third subtitle, which would be, you could possibly say, appealing to young people. And then the paragraph at the end could possibly be about recommendations for the future. Then you've got your conclusion, and then you sort of put your name and you date the report at the end there as well. Okay. Again, you could have another type of question I've put here. So your head teacher has proposed shortening the school day by 1 lesson, and has asked for opinions from the students to write your report. So this one would be less formal. This would be your informal report. Okay, so you'd have your title, your introduction, 3 or 4 sections. So 3 or 4 key ideas, the 3 or 4 sections. And remember to make sure you have your subheadings. Remember to acknowledge the counter arguments in each section, and then use the contradiction. And then you would end then with your conclusion. So here's an introduction to an argumentative piece aiming to discredit reality television shows. So look closely at the semantic field that's being used. So a semantic field is just a list of vocabulary or vocabulary associated with a certain topic. So British TV has become infected with a new disease that is sweeping our TV screens. The symptoms are easy to spot: vulgarity, low intellect, and generally a high level of boredom. So what is this new plague called? Reality TV. So other things you could use for that semantic field would be things like treatment, cure, spread, attack, epidemic. So keeping them all linked to those kind of like medical type terms, okay? And really playing on that idea is a really clever way to go about it. Okay, so we've got also some techniques here for compelling openings. So if you have a look at some of these openings, so you need to start with a controversial or provocative statement. So something which is going to grip people, something which is going to annoy people, something which is, like it says there, controversial. So all young people are fat, lazy, and selfish. It's obvious. Okay, so that's something. So listing the fat, lazy, and selfish, you're going to get a reaction from such a harsh statement there, aren't you? Okay, so use a rhetorical question. Is there anything we can do to improve the health of our children? Of course there is. So on the same topic, okay, so we're looking at kind of healthy eating, diets, fitness, well-being, okay? Force your reader then to put themselves in an imaginary position. So imagine this: you are 15 years old, 14 years old, okay? So trying to get the audience, the reader, to consider your perspective, to consider things from your point of view. Okay, almost forcing them is what we're doing here. And then you could also list adjectives. Okay, so use a list of 3 adjectives. So fat, lazy, selfish. Yes, I am talking about kids these days. Okay, so again, there's a harshness in the tone, all right? But it's important that, you know, we're looking at that as well, okay? The tone being important here. So like I said at the start, what you've got differently in the section B of this paper to the section B in Unit 2 is the fact that you've got 2 questions that you need to answer. So like it says here, you need to answer both B1 and B2, okay? So this is what you need to be mindful of. So you've got 40 marks in total, but you need to ensure that you're answering both B1 and B2, okay? And then section B, the writing. So here we've got an example question, okay? So you're concerned about the amount of waste produced in the average household in Wales. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper explaining your concerns and making suggestions about how the situation could be improved. Okay, so this obviously, like you probably will remember from your section A, was all on the theme of waste. So this is continuing on that paper. So bearing in mind, okay, you could potentially use some of that information, but we will go over that. So you are concerned. So the you are concerned, okay, is telling us that this needs to be a personal response, okay, a personal response. And it's asking you, you're concerned about the amount of waste that's being produced. So this gives you the opportunity then to talk about the different types of waste and how they are produced, quite possibly, okay, the average household in Wales, and it's telling you to write a letter. So giving us a sense of the format, okay? So you're writing a letter to the editor. So you need to then make sure that you are addressing your letter to the newspaper's editor. And then when it comes to the explaining your concerns, so here we need to make sure that you remember to break down writing questions, so you understand what you're writing. Here, obviously, you've been told to write about your concerns and your worries. So make sure that you've got that focus point when you are addressing this question, okay? And then where it says that you need to explain your concerns and make suggestions, you need to be giving in the response, you need to be covering a range of suggestions or range of details that would allow them to improve, okay? So like I said, it is perfectly acceptable for you to incorporate details from the text into the answer. So the resource material that's available for you to print and look at is perfectly acceptable for you to use that in an answer, okay? But it's just the way in which you use it, okay? So, for example, you could say something like, we need to tackle waste. It costs the average household £270 a year, and this is a huge waste of our money. So you're bringing in that £270 a year. So just bringing in some of the facts and figures that you've read in your resource material. You could then say something like, I do not think we need to take extreme measures like some, and then you could quote from the resource material, rummage in bins, but asking for the odd doggy bag will certainly help reduce waste. So copying out huge chunks of text from the reading materials is quite an unhelpful approach and will not get you any reward. However, making a few little sort of snippets, taking a few bits, will definitely help you. And obviously, you will be able to make sure that you're maintaining your focus as well and not sort of stressing out trying to, you know, make up numbers and make up facts and figures and statistics, okay? So with this, you'd have a quick plan, okay, where you're kind of, in your introduction, you're kind of stressing what your general concerns are, because that is what we're looking at, okay, your concerns. You would possibly then, in your second paragraph, select an area of concern and explore that in detail. Think about like how it's caused, what kind of other issues would it bring, can you bring in a couple of facts about it. You could then, in your third paragraph, introduce some sort of other ideas that don't necessarily have to be about kind of food waste, as in household waste. It could be other sort of waste. And then in the last paragraph, before your conclusion, you can suggest what maybe could be done to help and who can help out. And then you could maybe have like a list of strategies that could potentially be put in place as to, you know, giving ideas of how to improve. Okay, that's a possible way into it. And then with the second question then, okay, so notice, sorry, briefly, how the mark is split, but again, you'll have your mark scheme at the end that I'll show you, but be mindful that you get 10 marks for the communication, you get 10 marks for the accuracy as well. So if we're looking then at B2, what we're focusing on here, okay, is an article. So Text C was an article about British people being embarrassed by doggy bags. Write a lively article for a magazine. So just now we mentioned, if they say lively, what do they mean? If they say lively, it's got to be opinionated, got to be potentially humorous. It has to be engaging. So you're writing a lively article for a magazine about things that young people find particularly embarrassing. You may wish to include information about some embarrassing situations you have experienced. Okay, so this is only a link to the text where they reference you here with text C. Essentially what they're trying to do is go, all right, have a flick back to text C. Okay, that is what an article is. So you could look at how text C is worded, how text C is put together, and use that as a sort of a basis of how to sort of structure like the format wise of your task. Okay, so it's a link to the other text. So you're not doing anything else with the content of text C. You forget about it after that. Okay, so obviously we get the lively, like I've said, the lively article. So this indicates the idea that it needs to be fun, it needs to be humorous, it needs to be light-hearted. All right. We know that the format of the task is an article for a magazine. Okay. And it's asking you, okay, to make sure that you include information and persuade essentially that the reader about embarrassing situations. So here, what we'd be using is that A forest, okay? So we'll be making sure we bring in that A forest, that acronym where we look at the things like alliteration, facts, figures, opinion, rhetorical questions, emotive language. You've got your superlatives and your statistics, and then your tripling or your rule of three. So making sure we use those. And then it's telling you, use personal situations, include personal anecdotes and amusing stories that support your article. Often when you're writing from personal experience, rather than trying to make things up, it's more entertaining, it's more believable, there's a lot more integrity and sincerity to what you are writing. Okay, so just be quite mindful of trying to draw on your own experiences. So if there's something that's happened, you've been entirely mortified, that's something that you should be drawing on here. Okay, so if we just briefly now have a look at the guide to the marks that are being awarded here, your mark scheme. So it goes from band 5 down to band 1. On the left-hand side, you've got the communicating and the organising. And on the right-hand side, you've got the accuracy, so the use of language, grammar, punctuation and spelling. So what's really important is that you're mindful that you've got 20 marks on this mark scheme, and that applies to both. This mark scheme applies to both question 1 and question 2 in section B, okay? So your B1 and your B2 both use this mark scheme. If we look just here, for example, band 4, we're looking at clearly controlled and well-judged writing, secure understanding of the reader's needs, so appreciation of audience, but it needs to be secure. So being mindful of the purpose, audience, format, and task is really, really important here. There are multiple examples of lots of different tasks that have been annotated and marked by the WJC. So different candidates from different years, obviously there's different tasks on an annual basis. But what I would do is have a follow of that link that's on the screen, and you'll come across the various answers you could potentially have, okay? And what you'll have is a list of annotated exemplars that you're able to access then. And you can scroll through, you can see the different marks that are potentially being awarded. And it obviously will give you a little bit more understanding of, you know, where marks are awarded, where marks are taken away. But what you will notice when you go through those annotated exemplars, so annotated means the ones that have been marked and you can see the marks and the comments, is that you will notice that every single error has been underlined by the examiner. So every mistake that you potentially make, be it capitalized, be it missed comma, be it missed apostrophe, be it misspelling, okay, every single mistake will be underlined by the examiner. Okay, so just be mindful of that when you're looking at them. It's not that they're simply just being fussy, it's just that they're asked as examiners to underline every single error. So just be mindful of the focus on accuracy that's applied in this part of the paper. Okay, so we'll be seeing you for a live sort of Q&A type session later in the month. But thank you very much for your time, and best of luck to you. Thank you.